Okay, everyone. Hi. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn. We're at Dawson's right now, and we have a special guest with us, Jake Weissmann from the County Executive's Office. And we have some businesses here. So I am going to take you around as people introduce themselves. Okay, let's start with Tammy. Introduce yourself.
Hello, Julie Watkins, Government External Affairs.
Hi, I'm Andy Detweiler. I'm the founder of the Rockville Real Estate Exchange.
Hi, I'm David Benson with Architessa, a stone company locally.
Hi, I'm Josh Funk with Rehab to Perform.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, Sabrina David, Lakes Locksmith.
Hello. There we go. Hello, this is Gabrielle from GPD Associates, Management Consultant, Strategic HR Initiatives.
Hi, Lynn Perry Parker, small business and employment lawyer. How are you? Good to see you.
Okay. Now I want to introduce you to Cindy and then Jim.
You got it there. You got another person.
And her?
Josh, my son, went to
Okay, I'd like to introduce you to our sponsor, who is Cindy from Rockville Economic Development, and then we're going to turn it over to Jake.
Great, thank you. And we have Rochelle Wilson on the Zoom, and Rochelle is our Deputy Director. I'm Cindy Rivard. I am the CEO at Rockville Economic Development, Inc. We are an organization that helps to benefit the economy and tax base for the city of Rockville. And one of our signature programs is the Maryland Women's Business Center, where we work with entrepreneurs to help start and grow their businesses. So we offer a wide range of services. Some of them are location services. Rochelle's got a real estate background, so that's really her bailiwick. We're really excited to have you all here today, and we wanted to sponsor this because it's very important for us and for Jake also to hear from businesses, and not always the good stuff. We can't solve problems if we don't fully understand what the problems are. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jake Weissmann, who is the new Assistant Chief Administrator Officer at the county. And both Margie and I have had the pleasure of having some one-on-one meetings with him, getting to know him a little bit. He's getting to know us. So we're really glad to have him as part of our team. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you. My wife would tell you both that I'm very good at projecting my voice and also very dangerous to be given a microphone to. So I'm gonna try to put it down. Can everybody hear me? Yes, good, awesome. Plus that way I'm not holding something in front of my face. My name's Jake Weissmann. I've been with the county now for 98 days, 14 weeks exactly. I've told people in my office I'll stop counting days when I hit 100, which is intimidating. That's coming up close. I've spent the last 14 years before I arrived here in October in the Maryland General Assembly, most of that time in the office of the Senate President. First as Chief of Staff to Senate President Mike Miller, and then for Chief of Staff to Senate President Bill Fulkerson. And I worked for Senate President Miller for a while. For those of you who don't know who Senate President Miller was, he was longest serving Senate President in our nation's history. But one of the things he would frequently remind me is he was a small business owner. He ran a 15-member law firm in Clinton, Maryland, and Dunkirk, Maryland, and Prince George's and Crawford counties, as well as came from a retail family. His family owned D.K. Miller Meats and Liquors, which is a little store down in the corner of Old Branch and Brandywine Avenue. They actually have a drive-through liquor, so if you're ever looking for drive-through liquor, you don't want to get out of your car, that's one of the places you would go. I bring that up because small business has been something that's kind of been pounded into me my entire life. So I grew up in Baltimore. I'm one of 10 kids. And I always get a look for that. And I always have to say there's one set of multiples in the family. It's me and my twin brother, or identical twins. I work in politics. He's an Orthodox Jewish rabbi. I'm a righty. He's a lefty. So we really are mirror identical in that regard. But my parents had multiple jobs growing us to support us. My mom was is a teacher and was a bookkeeper, accountant. And my dad, a computer programmer, he programmed COBOL for anybody who knows ancient languages that we still use today, as well as he ran a small business, still does, dealing in selling and trading postage stamps, philately. And growing up, kind of watching them, kind of instilled a couple philosophies that I think are still core to who I am. I hope they're core to who I am, the number one of which is customer service. I spent a lot of time with my dad going to the post office. He wouldn't buy the rare and valuable stamps there, but he would mail them and get them back. And watching how he treated the people who worked at the post office and watching how he handled his individual customers was a reminder to me that that is what matters in this business. And then when I went to work in the legislature, I got my degrees, I guess I should say, in social work and psychology from UMBC for undergrad, social work master's, and eventually went back and got my law degree, which I'm only a little embarrassed about. But I learned very quickly that politics at its core is all about customer service. And it's something that Senator Miller kind of hammered into me. He had 32 members of his caucus, and you got to get reelected every year. And the number one way you do that was customer service. You keep the customers happy, right? So for the last 14 years, I've worked in a place where I've had 47 customers every day to make happy, and it's helped me remember that it's the number one job of government, right? Our customers are different from a business. Obviously, the tools that we have are different from a business. But at its core, every day that I come to this job, every day that I've come to any job, what's been driving me is the idea of, can we make people a little bit happier, make their lives a little bit easier, right? I think there are some people who think that government is going to change the world, and other people who think that government every day is just getting in people's way. I don't share either of those philosophies. The philosophy I have is that it is government's role, among other things, to make it a little bit better and to make it a little easier. So when Rich Madalino approached me about this job, I was very interested. I was interested both because I'd spent a lot of time in the legislative branch, but didn't actually see how government functioned day to day. Right? God love our legislative branch, but the purpose of the legislative branch is to pass laws. The executive branch actually has to, enforce them and put them into law. And so I was very interested from that standpoint, but also because Montgomery County is such a wild place, and I don't mean that. What I mean by that is you have places in Montgomery County that are some of the richest places in the country, and you have places in Montgomery County that are just as needy. There's somebody waiting that's just as needy as any other place in this country. You have a place with profound amount of opportunity and profound amount of need. And I think it is easy to just see one part of that picture or another part of that picture. And the truth is, the way this county works and the way it works best is when it recognizes that whole picture. So I've spent the last 98 days trying to do a lot more listening than talking, because what I've realized pretty quickly is that we cannot solve the problems if we don't have the answers. And I'll say this now, and I've kind of made this part of just our remarks when talking to anybody in this county. So two things. Number one, I've seen a lot of what I call, and I don't mean this to be collective trauma in this county, right? I've spoken to a developer, multiple developers and business owners who were telling me a story from 10, 15, 20 years ago. That's something that happened, and that's why this county is hard. That sucks. I feel really bad for you. If I had a time machine, I would put it on the list of things to do, though I'd be lying to you, it would be on this first list of things to do. If I have a time machine, I'm going to do some dinosaurs. But the second thing that I want to bring up is there are some things in this county that are unchanging, right? And by that I mean, I've had people complain to me about the county minimum wage or the county tax rates or the county legislation that gets passed by the council. There is, agree with it or disagree with it, a moral compass that the county council, the county executive, the voters of this county have kind of looked at to guide them. And there's nothing I can do necessarily in some situations that I would want to do to change that, right? There are businesses that say we should get rid of the county mandated minimum wage. That's not going to happen. Honestly, not that my opinion matters for anything, don't believe it should happen. But there is a lot we can do, and that's what I wanna focus on. I wanna have a earnest conversation. I think Margie will tell you I am trying to find the framed answers, right? Both the individual, this is an issue that I'm running into right now, and we're trying to address, but also the systemic, these are issues that keep cropping up that we need to address. I've been given pretty clear direction from the county executive that small businesses wants us to focus on, right? Obviously, we have the burgeoning industries like life sciences that we need to do everything we can to bring them here. But I think he sees small business as something that doesn't get as much attention as it needs to, and he wants to make sure that we are providing good attention. So that's kind of my blabbering way of saying, I hope we can have a conversation today and not just kind of me talking. And I also do want to hear the good things, right? There's things going right. Like, tell me those, because hey, it's nice to celebrate those. We've got a lot of good news. But if there are issues, like, let me know. That's what I want to hear.
Okay,
there we go. There we go. Well, I noticed you eyeing me. I was like, all right, we got something here.
No, I mean, I've been in this area for a long time, and like I said, I am a small business and an employment lawyer. And I was looking at your resume, and I was like, I need to bite my tongue, because my first response is, this problem about communicating is just the same language. And just looking at your background, your economic development, you talk about small businesses, you have no economic background, you have no finance background. And then you just said, and I totally disagree with you, when you said things like, wage, it's just not going to change. It's a moral issue. No, it's an economics issue. So we're not even speaking the same language. And I'm somewhat pulling your leg, because that is, there is a fundamental disconnect. And we're never going to be able to have that communication. It's not a moral issue. It's not a moral issue. It is a purely economic issue. And right now, it's dead. It was always an issue for me. Now it's dead. The market is controlling it. We have such a tight labor market. Look what's happening in the meetings. Everybody's running 15 plus. And that's really how the market should be. And that's just a philosophy point that I don't know how we get to have real discussions if we're already stopping to talk about this. It's not moving things.
And let me
difficult.
Let me rephrase. I hear what you're saying, and it was inartfully put on my part. Let me just say, when I was saying there is nothing we can do sitting around together right here that's going to move the marker on an issue, right? And I think we can all agree on that. No matter where we fall on that issue, just to pick my wood for a second, there's nothing that we're going to be able to say or do right here. And so what I'm trying to avoid is the using the time on issues that we're not going to be able to move the bar, because it's not a solvable issue that I can solve.
Well, perhaps the issue though is communication.
So communication.
Why do we get stuck in these issues that we can't talk about because we're not talking the same language?
So what do you think we do?
So that is, well, at least have it. That's what I said. You have very political and very prestigious backgrounds. I'm going to go full out right now. Not to be clear. And I'm old enough and I don't care anymore. But you work like a nice guy. We've had very open debates in public places and receptionists and things. One of his claims to fame is when he was very young in his career as a legislator, he was the one who was putting more restrictions on employers in terms of background checks. I mean, if you ask anybody, who thinks how did that person get hired? Why didn't they know? I'll tell you why they know, because background checks are expensive. They're hard to do. They're very restrictive. If you put it on there, bad enough. But it was duplicative legislation. It really wasn't neat. The name of the legislation was Fair Job Application Act. How can you vote no to a Fair Job Application Act, right? But getting an employment lawyer, I knew that the background was going to need 4 more background checks, let alone limiting it. And there was a reason for doing it. I mean, as a politician, he can handle it. but he had his own credit check problem, you know, or something. That's the kind of dialogue where, you know, okay, with legislation, we are in disconnect. When legislation like that is being put forward and it gets put forward, and you haven't had any discussions with people who actually know the economics of it, know the actual laws that are already out there and somewhat duplicative. And if you really have a need, how do you properly structure legislation and avoid collateral unintended consequences? Like, there's a lot of embezzlement in businesses, believe it or not, there really is. And people don't report it. You know, oh, I can't prove it, just, you know, if I can't be fired, I can't prove it. Yes, you can. I mean, there's so much disconnect. And it's just, and that's my word, it's just a lot of disconnect. So if you really want communication, I mean, you have ideas for legislation, really talk to people who are intimately involved with these issues.
So can I ask you a question about that?
I'm sure other people have this.
Can I just ask a quick question? Because I think that's a completely valid point and something we struggled with a lot when I went to Annapolis. Like, how, when it comes to Montgomery County, because I don't want to talk about Annapolis, I don't work there anymore. Like, how do we make sure that we are talking to the right people? How do we make sure that communication has come up a lot? And it's, you know, I think one of the things we struggle with the most because there are only so many avenues of communication. Like, how do we make sure that we are communicating with the right people and in the right way?
Like I said, I've never run into an office. I think there's not only traditionally in Montgomery County not been pro-business. That's an understatement. They're actually antagonistic to business. It's almost like, you know, if you have any kind of concern, like the minimum wage, you're automatically put into a box of you're Republican or you're this, and you've gotten worse. I mean, not only in anything, if you have a concern, like the president wrote about, you know, so we have passports for vaccinations. If you have any alternative position, you're put into a box and you are shut down. There's no communication. It's very, it's gotten worse. Everything. You know, so you put you into a box. If you have this opinion on this issue, then you are this person, therefore we're going to listen to you.
I do think that during the pandemic, the county did a good job of creating focus groups on a number of different types of issues where they invited business in to see what was happening to them. And I would love to see more of that because I personally also find it hard, even as an organization that represents business, to have conversations with your county council. County executive's office has been a little easier to interface with, but if there was a proactive, hey, let's have these forums.
Are you talking about the small business forums that county executive and council member that's had, or or just reduce it?
No. This was a concerted effort to deal with the pandemic, and they created task force of people in various industry sectors to talk about their needs.
Absolutely. No, we can absolutely. Were anybody else involved in those?
I was every week. Yeah. But all the chambers were on those, and there were some businesses on it, but they're mostly on.
So how do we expand? How do we reach a business like yours to make sure that you're part of that conversation? Now, we're getting there. Where were those costs?
Can you move over a little bit, Josh? Can you move over to that seat, and you're up next? Okay.
No, I'm just curious, where were they publicized?
Well, the chambers were invited. It was more of I think it was a private thing. It wasn't publicized to businesses. It was like almost invitation only kind of thing.
So we can do, I know in the past, we've had every other Friday kind of these Zoom town halls of businesses too. And it was specifically focused on the pandemic, and to be frank, before Omicron hit, we were talking about retooling them to make sure that they were, you know, best geared towards getting businesses to resources they need. Would something like that be helpful in a way to communicate, or does it feel like a waste of time?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you were gonna say, hey, there's every Friday a new topic is going to be brought up, or small businesses can give opinion on, or something like that, I think that would be great for the county. I mean,
what sort of topics would interest you?
I mean, hiring, firing,
things that you deal with
And
every
the thing that you
day,
deal with
right?
every day. I think the one thing, Jake, that you do as I'm a small business owner, I deal with, a lot of things, having 80 employees. I barely have time to attend industry. So like my industry is tie-up industry. So I barely have time to get involved with my industry to learn and educate myself further. But then to be a part of other small businesses, it's great for networking and getting connected. But then to do another thing to give back to the county, like opinions and things like that. It is a time struggle. And like, where would you get that feedback from? I don't know, maybe it's surveys, and ownership levels of small businesses. But Montgomery County,
No, I think
like
the time factor is a
Rockville,
huge problem.
some big cities.
Yes.
Bethesda, and it's like I don't know. I don't know how you do it. Meeting with people face to face, I think, is the first step. Like, that's very good to me.
So I just wanted to kind of wind it back a little bit. First of all, just acknowledge that I think you have an extremely difficult job.
I appreciate that.
You know what I mean? And I really do believe that you're trying your best, and I appreciate it. But just to maybe shine some more light from a different perspective.
Yeah.
From an analogy standpoint, in a former life, right, 15 years ago, I worked for a company whose top management, they managed a very specific way. And it was not a good way. And nobody had any trust, nobody believed in anybody, and nobody would ever, right? So they brought in, when they brought in a middle manager, or they brought in somebody underneath, and that person literally tried their best to change the relationships and what have you, right? It didn't matter what that person did, it didn't matter how much they wanted to listen, it didn't matter what kind of conversations they were having, because everybody knew that above them, right? Nothing was going to change. And I think that before you go into, because obviously you work with Bud, right? And I think before you go too deep into what should we have a conversation about and what do we want to talk about, right? I almost think you have to turn like internally and say, okay, what is really possible to change, right? Because if you come to the table, and obviously there's a lot of history, as you said, if you come to the table and say, let's talk, I want to hear what you guys have to say, let's change whatever, right? But we all know that nothing is going to change for a lot of the reasons that you're saying. All you're doing is eroding that trust even more, and the number of people that are going to come to the table are going to be fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer, because they're going to say, okay, and pardon me, I forget your first name for that's terrible. Jake. And I say Jake, man, Jake's a freaking fantastic guy,
But
right?
it doesn't matter.
But it does matter,
So
right? So, and that's what I think. If you're asking again from how everybody's what view, like that's the question. The question is, what can we legitimately make inroads on or agree upon? Because if we're having conversations about anything else, all you're going to do is just continue that issue.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's really well said. And look, I think there is a huge deficit of trust in this county between the business community and right. Like I've seen that. I haven't seen it, frankly, heard it articulate as well as you just did. But like, there is this huge deficit of trust, and we've had a lot of conversations internally with department heads. Department of Permitting Services, I'm going to use this now, right? Mitra ODEs compared to where they were a couple. But I want to get to that because
it's better. I wanted to talk about
because Mitra, no. I appreciate that because the DPS has tried possibly harder than any county, from my observation so far, to change the culture in the county. Right, in the department, in terms of being very responsible when issues come up.
And she's very new.
And Mitra's
I was great though when I got to I don't know if he's still around.
don't know if he is. Essan and Mitra, like, but there's definitely there's definitely issues there. So the question I have in part, because we're absolutely having these conversations internally, right? In terms of what is feasible to do to make it better. Where can we remove barriers? We accelerate timelines and make it quicker, right? Is a part of the conversation. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't have the answer to this. I'm curious. How we restore or start building back the trust that needs to be built.
So what you have to say is, I would use it in the same way I'm a lifetime sales guy, right? And the first thing you do, regardless of anybody that you're talking to and anything, is you find a way, you find something that you can agree with, right? And that's always the building block that you start with. And it's got to be genuine, right? Because you have another enormous problem, whether anybody wants to call it out or not. And this is what you were saying, which is spot on. Let's be honest, the majority of people in this county, I don't know if the majority, I don't want to speak, but a large amount are government workers that have always been taken care of by the government. They've never had to pay anybody else. They don't understand payroll. They're just not familiar with any of those things. So when they go to make those, they're not qualified, at least not off the bat, to really be making those decisions. So if you want to restore that trust, in my opinion, you have to have your leaders somehow convince your leaders to say, hey, look, we don't understand that, right? So, not so much, it's not so much I think business owners need to educate or say, let's have a conversation or what can we do better. It's that the leaders in whatever capacity really need to decide whether or not they really do want to make a difference. You can say, let's focus on small business, right? Because like you were saying, well, of course, I mean, what a great talk,
Sure.
right? Nobody wants to hear, hey, let's do everything that we want. Let's do everything that we can do for the big corporations, but they need some help, man.
Sure.
This income inequality, that's not bad enough. We need to help out the corporate. So what you're talking about? Let's help small business, right? But again, unless you're taking, I think the first thing you have to do is really decide how to find people that actually really do want to change, and just be genuine. Look, I don't even care if you want to say, and this is what you were saying, which I think was really, actually, I applaud you for your candor. If you're just like, look, these things are off the table, right? Just the way that it's going to be. That's how we run it here. Minimum wage, whatever, whatever it is, that's fine, right? These two things are things that we're really willing to change and look at. And let's just focus on those two things, right? Because if you focus on those two things and you can actually make effective change, then you start to build that trust, right? And if you just try to do everything else with the thing, I just don't think I think you're going to continue to have that same road that you've already
David, you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, just as far as going back to issues, as far as what issues you'd like to hear about, we have been in Rockville basically for 36 years. Our headquarters is here, our showroom is now on Rockville Pike, but the only difficulty I've really ever had is with moving that showroom and the permitting process.
Okay,
So
tell me about that.
it just took, 8 weeks estimate, but it took 12 weeks.
And
It
how
took way
long ago
longer,
was this?
this last summer.
Okay, so
2019.
so they didn't have the planning.
It was during COVID also, so people working from home, but
No, but that's still a problem.
the guy wouldn't
Predictability.
respond. The only way I got it is by talking to Margie and really getting more involved with Rockville Chamber of Commerce, and then she picked somebody else, and then finally.
So obviously, my email and cell are on my cards. Please reach out. That's what I'm here for. But permitting services has come up a lot, right? And there's
Rockville is different.
Rockville is different from the county, which is I think part of the layers, and then planning is different from permitting, right? We have almost no control over planning.
And I'm actually surprised about that. I don't know, was he just not talking to the right people? No, because they fixed their permitting to have this fast program. It must have been the pandemic.
Yeah, it must have been fixed.
Yeah.
Is it possible also it wasn't within the city borders?
We had to go to the county, I think. Yeah.
Not all of Rockville is.
Right, no, he moved from Rockville to the,
In the city limits, it's its own jurisdiction.
Yeah.
It has its own permitting. If you're outside the Rockville city limits, you're dealing with
Yeah, he
So-
has over the county.
So I wanna take, and I'm sorry, I did not write down everyone's names when we went around. Your name again? Andy?
Yes.
So, and your name?
Dave.
Okay, so Andy, I want to take Andy's suggestion for a second. Who here has run into problems with DTS, with permitting?
My clients
The
have.
county permitting.
My clients have.
Right.
So that my
Right.
clients have a lot.
Okay, so, and your name, sorry, Josh, and I think we met at the event before Christmas.
Yes.
So, Josh, tell me what
Yes.
you've written.
So we're in 5 counties at this point. I can say by far that delays, the communication, and the overall level of responsiveness in Montgomery County is significantly different than Anne Arundel County, Howard County, Carroll County, and Frederick County. Okay. All were improved with regards to our level of awareness of what's going on, the general contractor's awareness of what needed to be done in a timely fashion. We even lost our paperwork. I don't know why we were still doing paper
It's a great question.
applications. And this was right about the early part of 2020, late part of 2019. So granted, it may have changed since then. But it would honestly mirror some of the challenges we've seen even with like the internship programs in the county public schools, where we're still largely doing paper formatting, and the other counties are far beyond us with regards to the utilization of technology. Like why we're not using essential processing like place where you log in and you're able to see everything, and all the dates pop up, check marks are there, and it's very transparent. Like I don't understand why we can't do that. Sometimes see people be dismissive and say, "Oh, we have a lot more people." Well, that didn't happen overnight, so that's not really an excuse. It's more of a sort of just being more dismissive of an issue that is affecting a lot of businesses. And on your end, if things have changed, what are we doing from an external comm standpoint to communicate this to business owners? Hey, we know you've had such a negative experience with this. Let me put together a presentation that everybody can reference on the county website. Here's how we do the permitting process now. Here's where we made improvements. But you might have made improvements and I have no idea. And I'm sitting here on a authority and I want to go into Rockville. But guess what? For a large variety of different reasons, I'm not touching Rockville. I'm going into other counties right now.
Rockville is a separate jurisdiction.
I'm aware, but I am so just operating in Montgomery County over the last 2 years. I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest.
I love it. I feel much better than
My experience with operating, and I will say this, I'm not the only multi-county operator that I speak to. The questions are largely, how is your business doing in Montgomery County? How is your business doing everywhere else? So I can get into the policy and procedures placed on businesses over the course of the pandemic, where I've had to send twice as many internal emails to staff and patients with regards to policy and procedure changes versus other counties as well. Twice as many. I don't know why, but we're all over the place. We're all over the place. There's more. We go here 1 month. This month we're doing something different. It is burdensome. That's the word that I keep thinking of when I think of operating in Montgomery County compared to all the other places that we operate. Right now we're 6 locations, soon to be 7 and 8. So it's not something that I have a very limited perspective on. So those are the 2 biggest things that I think that we have trouble with, and a lot of other people. I mean, we have 43 people, not quite to that level. We're not 150 or 200, but picking up on what Andy's saying, like we're focusing a lot on big corporations, and I think that's great for a wide variety of different reasons. But I think largely people are out of touch. They're very, very out of touch with regards to what's actually going on small business-wise. I don't think a lot of people listen to the small business community, and that's where I also sit here and go, man, I consider myself pretty connected. I'm in every single chamber in the county, and I had no clue that there was a focus group here in the past 2 years. None. Zero. That's news to me. So,
communication has come up in just about every conversation I've had in the business community in the last 90 years. And part of the question I have asked and will ask here is, what are the means that we can, because I have had this, Archer keeps reminding me that y'all can hear me better when you can actually, hear me. I have had the conversation internally, kind of go back to the point of we got to have the conversation internally of what are we ready to do. And so I've had the conversation with public information officer, with the communication shop of we need to communicate better, we need to be ready to communicate better. So part of that question, I mean, you mentioned, taking a PowerPoint or having a meeting where we go through, here's the permitting process now, and here's kind of the changes that we've made to make it easier, which is definitely something we can do. I have been told that it's been done, but clearly it has not been done effectively. This hasn't been proven. Like that's just a reality. What are the best ways that we can make sure that we are effectively communicating with as many businesses as possible?
I mean, my first question: do you have a list of emails from the ownership level of all the small businesses?
So here's the problem: we don't, because the county doesn't have access. The state doesn't have access to this information. I've reached out to the comptroller's office. Won't share contact information in that regard.
That's the kind of legislation that would be helpful. See?
Would you be supportive of a business tax license where you're required to register your business and that information for maybe $10 a year?
I feel like why wouldn't you do that
I
already?
mean, that's so
For
much
Richmond, I just
requirements.
opened a showroom in Richmond.
But that's how other jurisdictions do it.
But I'm just saying, you fill out the certificate of occupancy or whatever, you put my name and email in there. It's there already in the city of Richmond. I had to do the same thing here, at some point to get the certificate. Why isn't it a part of that process? Why isn't it part of that process?
I mean, there's so many
if I had to guess, there are prohibitions in terms of information sharing, and I am assuming, I am not a practicing attorney, I am assuming it is just a matter of, I know you are, so maybe you can, but of creating a box on a form that you check saying, yes, the county can have access to my email to send me information. Now, I was speaking to a small business owner, we had a, sorry?
We should be able to opt into some
Right.
say, hey, like we are. If you people online are having trouble hearing. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna take it around. I'm gonna take it around. Go ahead.
Oh, look, it's Katie. Hi, Katie.
So what are you saying? What are you saying?
I was saying that we should have some mechanism to opt in, that if businesses want to participate, or if they want to gain more understanding about something, or if they're encountering some sort of an issue, that there's a means to communicate with them and say, hey, this is coming down the pipe, or hey, we welcome your feedback, that kind of stuff. It needs to have some sort of mechanism for that.
I'm gonna push it around the other way again, because I've been involved in chambers for as long as I've been in practice, which is almost 35 years now. And I always find these meetings very interesting. They're always going to be, it's going to be a give and take and a talk. And inevitably, it's the person who comes from the county and talks at us. There is very little give and change. Now, you're letting us have give and change, but for the most part, it's always, here's what we're doing in your face, and it's always after the fact. There's no from the end point. We think we're going to consider legislation on this. Here's the why. We don't even get the why on a lot of this stuff. And so I think there's and I started with my original discussion, a difference from a political mindset from a true business mindset. We just still are not speaking the same language. And they are politicians, so you're going to have some difficulty with that. But really, what are the needs, and then scoping legislation to meet the needs, not the other way around.
And the only thing I'll say on that, because I think there is far too much talking at from politicians. It would be extraordinarily helpful to have a conversation. It doesn't necessarily need to be today, in terms of, hey, what legislative solutions could be helpful to some of these? Because I have zero problems with bringing any legislative solution, whether it's to the county executive or members of the county council, and say, this is what I'm hearing from the business community in terms of this would be a helpful, fixable solution that we can control and we can adjust, right? I will readily admit so we're dealing with this with the DPS issue, where we are now in active talks with the county attorney in terms of drafting legislation to try to fix a problem that's brought up to us. That is absolutely something I am very excited to find. If there are things that are addressable, I will readily admit that I have and will run into walls working in this county, just like you do in any job. I believe when you're running into walls to run in at full steam. And that's what I want to do. So if during our conversations or afterwards or over the the course of the weeks, months, and years ahead, like there are ideas that pop up, like let's have that conversation, because the worst thing that I can do is run it up the chain and get told, hey, that's not going to happen, and come back and say, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Here's the reasons why. I've been told why. Agree, disagree. Unfortunately, but at least we can try to force that conversation, because I do want to force it.
So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Because again, I think that's really important. At least in terms of how I solve problems or try to solve problems, right? Let's talk about what Josh was saying, right? I'm gonna be really super candid and cynical, right? Who does that affect? Who cares, right? Are people, based on what he just described, are people losing votes because of that? Are they having their own small businesses affected because of that? Are they, right? Why does it matter what he said? Because if you can't identify something that is actually going to hit somebody to where they care, you're going to spin your wheels, right? And so so my question to you is like, look, I mean, again, you're the fall guy, man, right? I mean, it's easy.
I'm the new guy, so I don't even have to be the fall guy.
That's what I'm saying. Like so he can trot you out in front of everybody and let you take the hits, right? But until you find a reason that is really going to make somebody actually change those things, right? I think you're going to struggle. So that's what I would go back to again on those type of things. Why should anybody care?
So can I push back a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
So first off, I do want to volunteer that I volunteered for this. Nobody like I asked Margie, hey, I'd love to, the first time we talked, because I'm a glutton for punishment. I got 2 kids, a 6 and 3-year-old at home, so anything that gets me away from them for any portion, I love them, but I'll take it.
Your predecessor did a communication tour too, and he also had no economics background and got the same sort. Just saying.
There is, from my conversations, there is it might be difficult to believe, but from what I've seen, it's true. There is a pride of work from people in county government, right? Like, if they've redone Department of Permitting Services, right, they're going to want to brag about it, to tell you how this is a better system and to make it easier, right? And so that incentive isn't necessarily in votes achieved, although, politically, I'm sure that's a part of it. Their incentive isn't in terms of their small business, because it might, but there is an incentive of pride of work, just like any employee has in any business, of being proud of the work they do and wanting to talk about it and wanting to share. So there is an incentive there. There also is an incentive. The only way to change the reputation of the county is to change the reputation of the county, right? And there is, this is not going to surprise anyone here, a large amount of ego in running for office and people who serve in elected office. Did I shock anyone? But they all want to have that pride of ownership to be able to say, yeah, we've changed things and we've done it. And so I do believe there's a matter of playing to that ego.
I think you're right, and I think, and not to leave it be, because I don't want to bring up hypotheticals anymore, but I think the best chance that we all have as a collective community is kind of sounding that bell, because the answer is maybe you don't notice it today, right? And maybe you're still fine in terms of office, in terms of finances or whatever. But if people like Josh and companies like Josh's and whoever, and I think I would argue you can already see this happening, right? So where what was once an extremely proud and progressive and forward-thinking and I'm blanking on the word, a fruitful, like, financial county is not, like you can only put, it might not be what it once was, I guess, if you don't start solving some of these problems and in a real way, as opposed to catering, as opposed to not. I'll just put it like that. Yeah.
I will apologize because I'm going to have to leave here in a little bit, but I'm going to intend to be productive with regards to a suggestion.
Yes.
There's just an example, and I try to have a good pulse of stuff going on in other places. But for example, like Boston has something called City Store. And the 2 words that I think always come to mind with regards to being effective and efficient with regards to communication is transparency and objectivity. Otherwise, we can sit here with situational circumstance, and we can look at things in terms of this little micro area, this little micro area, this little micro area. But then if I get into where that takes us is an ecosystem or a balanced dashboard with regards to how we're measuring things. So dare I say you have a county score with regards to small business, and you're looking at, let's talk permitting. Somebody applies for permitting, and there's transparency on how quickly things get done, how quickly like their responses are, how quickly companies are getting up to profitability, how many companies are going out of business, and then you have a much more objective conversation, which in my opinion really benefits your side of the house, and it also makes some conversations like this a little bit easier because you can look back on and say, hey, look, 2 years ago we were here. Permitting process took, and if I'm talking about like our Bethesda office, it delayed us 5 months. It's not ideal for anybody. But if that was an anomaly, because you could present information that would suggest otherwise, then it was an anomaly, and at the end of the day, that comes back on me and the build team and the landlord. And I think without having a transparency of more objective related metrics that are viewing society or whatever, and we'll use this small snapshot as small business, you're going to struggle with regards to being able to prove that things are actually changing, that they are getting better, or that they're actually really good here already. That's and really that helpful. People don't necessarily have a valid argument with regards to some of those things, especially if you pull outside data and you look at Howard County and Anne Arundel County or Frederick County or Northern Virginia. Everybody keeps talking about how friendly Northern Virginia is. We're going to find that out. We're going to Tyson's Corner this year. So we'll see. Like, we'll have a really, really good idea of whether or not it's friendly. And you'll be able to have, like these conversations with businesses, and you'll be able to go attract people because you have objective metrics. Otherwise, we rest on our laurels of the past, which, hey, maybe Montgomery County used to be incredibly business friendly, and it used to be a great place to do business. And I hope it never got. I'm born and raised here, born in Shady Grove Hospital. I've been here for 35 years of my life, And as I mentioned before, I'd love to have a third office in Montgomery County, but we're just not overall that confident with the climate. And obviously, there's a wide variety of factors that I think are playing into that. But if I could make a suggestion, it would be to create some kind of balanced dashboard with regards to metrics. It comes back to those two words, transparency and objectivity. And then largely you're creating external communications that everybody can see. You're distributing it to the chambers. You're distributing to economic development of the various cities. You have a social media manager that's putting a little bit more of like an updated and modern spin on things, and then you're potentially not running into some of this back and forth on sometimes situational circumstance or subjectivity or perception that we know you can go down a bunch of different rabbit holes on. So
no, that's really helpful. And we do have, ironically, clearly, it is not out there. It's not communication. Keeps coming back to me. We have a counting stat, which chronicles like 600 different. But if we're not talking about it, we're not sharing about it. It's like it doesn't exist. That's
Boston City Score. It's fascinating, and obviously running the whole
I will pull this up.
So
I really appreciate it. It's really helpful.
I have a couple of questions today. Thanks for doing this. It's very courageous to come out here and listen to folks. So, and it's related to what Josh was saying. I've been hearing about the permitting issue since Ehrlich was elected. So I'm wondering, was there ever an action plan that was established to kind of document these are the issues that we are seeing in order to change that? This is the action plan to change it, and you have your indicators that show what it is that you have or haven't changed, or how the progress has gone. So I don't know whether there was ever an action plan for the permitting group to implement changes. So that's one question I have.
So I know there were list of changes that came out of that small business kind of listening for. I didn't find that written, summary action plan. I'm not sure kind of the depth of how it was written, but let me get that.
So that's how you can hold
Absolutely.
the departments accountable for the changes, or maybe also for them to request the support they need in order to implement the changes. The second question I have is related to communication. Is there somebody on the county executive staff that is communication strategist that kind of has communication action strategy in place that
So we have a public information office that does that. The county executive about 6 months ago hired a communications director to kind of focus on that, and it's kind of being reorged. But that is very much kind of at the. I have a meeting about this later tonight in terms of how we better communicate with the public because when you have kind of system-wise, you have PIOs in different departments. There is MCEDC for all intents and purposes, is the business and marketing arm of the government, except they're not quite governmental, and so it's quasi-governmental. So the county funds them, but they're an independent entity. And so there's issues like that we've been working through to make sure to see how we can communicate about it.
the public information office. There's the box, there's the send, strategy is how do I reach my stakeholders by audience, right? And that's maybe what.
And so that's something NCDC is focused on, right? They put out the Connection to the Dots report about 2 months ago that had that as one of their recommendations. But look, it is 100%. It becomes kind of a matter of everyone don't want to duplicate. Like clearly we're not doing enough of it, but don't want to duplicate work. And number two, like there's a question of, for lack of better term, mission creep in terms of who is accountable and responsible. And so that's something that I think it is a completely fair, valid, correct point. And I'm excited to see how we solve this problem because I sat down with Jamie Stevenson a couple weeks ago. Was small business navigator for 8 years. Just incredible conversation, and she just kept hammering into me. She actually told me don't even have conversations like this. Like they're not the conversations you want to have. They're not. She's like it's all about communication. That's what's broken. That's what needs to be fixed. And that very much got hammered into my soul at that lunch. And so it is very, very much kind of the focus of the conversations I have with her. And it's clear communications needs to be to then share, hey, this is what we're doing right, this is why it's easier or different, or because if we fix internal procedures, but we don't actually tell people it's internally fixed and how it's better, none of it matters. It's like throwing it into a well.
I want to follow on something that you said about internal that they should have pride about what they're doing, and then what Josh said about working in Virginia. I am also licensed in Virginia, and I set small businesses up in Virginia. And again, a fundamental difference in terms of approach in permitting issues in Virginia, my experience in northern Virginia counties. There's a problem. It's not, okay, you got a problem, go back, you lost some time. It's, here's the problem, and they actually take a proactive view because they have background in making it work. We want to come to an end solution. They'll tell you, here's the problem, here's some solutions you could do. Here's the law, here's the government, here's what we're going to do. First of all, they have a lot less laws and regulations than we do, which does help see the process, but it's a much different mentality. It's much more business oriented in terms of getting, here's a problem. We don't end it there. We try to help you solve it. Here's what you need to do to get it done. And they actually take proactive steps to do it, as opposed to, checked off my box today. Nope, you missed it. Josh, sorry, you're 3 months behind now because you didn't do something right. Because someone else didn't tell you what you need to do, or you got inconsistent information. It's a much more truly accountable and purposeful approach to solving the problems, not just identifying them.
I can share something. There was a school that was supposed to be here today. She couldn't make it. The problem was she is permitting problem, so we got her through permitting, and now she's having a water issue.
Is this
Yes, Celebrate School.
Yeah.
She didn't even know where she was in the steps. I guess the landlord was supposed to do something and didn't tell her, or and it's like, why can't I open? Why is it taking so long to open? So, I get called at the end. like David called me, he was beside himself. He had to like get out of there by a week or something. And, so, yeah.
So we're, I think, 3 months away or 2 months away from a new permitting system in DPS that they've been working on since Meacher came on board that will dramatically shift what we're looking at there. And then we're going to have to make sure that we are having the meetings and the videos and to properly tell people, here's how the new system works, here's why it's better, because, I mean, that goes back to the communications point. Like, and we're talking a lot about permitting services. Obviously, there's a variety of departments that I'm sure people have run into issues with, right?
Child care, talk about school. I represent small schools too, a couple. Actually, I live more than a couple. You talk about inconsistencies and disinformation. Because the lower lead kids are child care regulations on top of school regulations. Then you add all this health and safety that now COVID. The inconsistencies, the lack of information. Yet the health inspector come there, you're in violation. Well, no, you guys got these regs. So that's state, not county. We're different from that. I mean, that's you can shut down. They could lose in an instant.
Yeah, no, I've spoken to the child care director and my kids child care, and they're not even in this county. But the proactive steps part that you're talking about is think important. You know, we ran into a situation with a gentleman who was trying to make some changes to his house, right? He was trying to, I think it was add a pool to his house and ran into a problem with permitting services. And we ended up flagging it and got it moving and getting it fixed. But the conversation I had with DPS at that point was, okay, how do we make sure that this problem doesn't pop up with somebody else? Because solving an individual problem is wonderful for that individual. It does nothing. It is a drop in the bucket. It does nothing if we cannot change the system in that regard. To, even if there is a problem, better communicate, this is a problem, this is a holdup. So that way it's not just a staring contest of everybody waiting for everybody else to do something. Because I think that is possibly the number one frustration that I've heard is, I just want a call back. I just want an explanation as to what is going on. So if there's something I can do, I need to fix it. And that is, I mean, it goes back, it is in part a culture thing, right? It is in part making sure top down, bottom up, everybody understands that it is a customer service and customer oriented, approach. And that's initiative that's being worked on right now, in the county exec's office to try to get every department more. It's a small thing, but every department now has on their website, front page, if you run into an issue, if your customer service isn't up to standard, let us know. And that email goes directly to the county exec's inbox. And the reason we set that up, it is small. Some would argue it is performative, but we cannot say that we care, sorry, my language, I'm trying to censor myself, that we care about customer service if we are not saying that we care about customer service and that we're not acting on it. And I know that is a small thing in the grand scheme of things, and we'll work on some bigger things internally, but it is taken to that communication, to that customer service, and to that proactivity. You're getting your steps in today, Mark.
I know. Well, the comment that I was going to make is that a lot of these processes that people handle online, that they handle it online, and that can should trigger like a text message or trigger an email or trigger something to say, hey, we're acting on it, or this is our next step, or something like that. Some of this stuff doesn't, like in this day and age, doesn't really involve a human. It shouldn't have to, unless there's some extraordinary reason that something happened that warrants a phone call. But a lot of other stuff is then people know, oh, hey, I'm in queue, or I can expect inspection on this day, or that kind of stuff. I mean, there's no reason why we can't implement that stuff, and it would make things so much better for everyone. And they'd be able to manage their businesses better and their projects better. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Do you want to say what you wanted to say?
Well, I wasn't gonna say anything, but I mean, now I'm kind of on the spot. So I just want to let you know. So like many people, my background's entrepreneurial, and I can tell you for about 2 or 3 years, like I studied digital marketing, and I continue to. I do most of my stuff online. It's where I get many of the problems that you're talking about could literally be solved with a piece of software that costs about $10 a month. I mean, it really is that simple. Yeah, I'll probably just leave it at that. You know, it's not.
How about
It
CRMs
really,
and other,
not. You don't even have to go to CRM. I mean, you don't need to have insanely complicated. Like, I mean, there is technology has advanced so far, and I know Josh does a great job with that stuff too. I mean, it really is. It's so simple, you know, in terms of setting stuff up to get those reminders, to get, you know, these aren't the type of things that, yeah, sure, maybe 20 years ago, you would have to bring in an IT consultant and design you all kind of custom, you know, spend $50,000. It's literally like $10 a month. I mean, or $50 a month to where you can have those things set up so that, like, if person submits whatever, they then get this, right? Or they then get that, you know? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Margie asked me to do
Are
it.
you talking about, like, I'm thinking, like, internally we run something called, almost like a net promoter score where it's dripped based on, say somebody interacts with permitting services, right? They have their initial submission. There's an email that gets attached to their initial application. There is a dripped email system or campaign that is sent to them over the course of, let's say, a 6-month period. And on those set intervals, it is, how has your experience been so far? How likely are you to refer somebody to DPS? And they get a 1 through 10. There's a comment box. It sounds super, super simple, but then you create like these feedback loops that are just automated. They're regular. You're able to look at it internally to gauge, okay, where are we starting? Oh, well, guess what? We have all detractors from DPS at this point, or everybody's a passive, which is like a 7 or 8. And then at least you have something that's measurable. Again, it's objective, and you've looked at things, and over time, ideally, it improves.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, but I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, because it gets tied into your CRM.
There's so many things like that.
Like there's one called Flavio.
There's so many products.
ALAYBIO or something.
There's so many products like that, and you can always start. You can start so simple, right? So like the problem is maybe you just say the only thing we want to make sure of, okay, is that when somebody submits a request, that we don't forget them. I mean, literally something that easy, right? Or that you just set it up. It's the piece of whatever software. So okay, now they're in the system. Now on the back end, you can have some kind of like. I mean, hell, just think of it like Google email, right? Where they even have like a star system. You know what I mean? Like, okay, well, we click the star, that person's been responded to. There's something called like Zendesk. I mean, there's just so many of these. They're so easy to implement, and it almost sounds like. And again, I'm not being facetious, you know, whatever it means, but it seems like if you're talking about communication being the problem, right? Then it almost sounds like the first answer. In some of the guard, it's just like you just need like an operations manager, right? You just need somebody to come in. Okay, what's ever going on? All right, what's the easiest stopgap that we can? Let's just start with this. So at least people, I think we can all relate to and shake our heads. Have you ever tried to give somebody your business and like they don't even call you back, right? And you're just like, how can that even be possible? But that's like 50% of businesses. Right. Yeah.
Nobody calls.
It's crazy. So, you know, again, there's lots of really easy
it's a
things.
really good point.
There's also live chats. I don't know if there is one on the Montgomery County website.
I don't believe there is. That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, that you have to, that's a little bit
$40
harder
a month.
because you have to staff, like when you
$40.
start to get into that. But,
Right. I
you
mean,
know.
we do have 311, right? Which people can call or reach out to 311, but it's not a universal system like that. It's a little bit better than carrier pitch, you know, maybe USPS, but yeah.
Well, you know what? I think this has been really great. I want to respect everybody's time because we're at an hour. I want to thank you for coming and listening to the businesses, because one of the things with the business forums that all the chambers participated, there weren't any businesses there. We were representing the businesses.
So Margie, if I can say one thing.
Yeah.
I recognize I come in here with a pretty large trust deficit. Not for me personally, but for like I am hoping more for deeds, not words. And I'm hoping that, you know, you call us out when things are going wrong and you tell us when things are going right. Like Margie does. Margie's great at it. Cindy's, you know, great at it. But like we're not going to fix the problem without fixing the problem. So as much as possible, like, I want this to be the start of a conversation, not the end of one. And I'm hoping, I've got a couple pages of notes here to go back and try to find out what the barriers are to get some of these things implemented. I mean, this is a great starting point in that regard, but like, please, I really do appreciate this. You want me to hold it for you?
Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming. Thanks those of you who made it onto Zoom. I know we had a little glitch trying to get on, so I hope we didn't lose people right away.
You did a great job, Margie.
You
did a great job.
Here. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great day. And if you need Jake's contact information, just call me. I'll give it to you. Okay, so thank you. Bye.